Welcome back to the Chasing Happiness podcast, an honest podcast about finding happiness, what it really means, and the process of getting there. My name is Crystal, and today on the podcast, I am joined by Leighann Joseph, who, by the way, is a fellow Canadian, which is super exciting for me. She is a life and leadership coach and the founder of Living Loud Coaching. Thank you for joining me today, Leighann. Do you want to give everybody who is listening to the podcast a brief description of who you are and what you do? Because I'm sure you'll do far more justice to it than I just did.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be joining you, and I know we're going to have a great conversation. As you said, I am the founder of Living Loud Coaching. You know, Crystal, I've had the privilege of living, working, and playing around the world in the Middle East and Africa, and that was such a blessing for me. Like many, it's not always easy for me to know how to navigate my way through difficult emotions. This can impact our motivation, our leadership style, our happiness. And my experience abroad led me to be more compassionate, less judgmental, and helped me find my path to success and happiness through coaching. As a life and leadership coach, I developed the Live Loud coaching program, which spends 3 months focusing on elevating emotional intelligence to get women promoted, loving who they are, and ready for their next adventure.
I love that. And this is something you and I have briefly talked about previously, is this not just supporting women, but supporting women with intention and being very purposeful about your emotional intelligence. So do you want to talk a little bit, because you did mention, you've lived in other places, you've been exposed to other cultures, which I talk about here on the podcast regularly because I love travel, and the last year of not being able to go anywhere has been killing me. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that set you on that path and what that really means? Because some people who are listening to this podcast might not really know what emotional intelligence is.
Right. So a couple of things. The living and working around the world was a game changer. It opens your eyes to a couple of things. How much work we need to do to bring us all together.
Sure.
And also how much more alike than we are different. Oh. And I've often said, I think one of the reasons the experience was so life-changing for me is because when you're new to an environment, you don't realize how much you're relying on others to be that support, to be that guide.
Sure.
And I found myself in situation over and over again where people were reaching out to help me and to make sure that I felt welcomed as part of their community. And that it spoke to me on the emotional level.
Sure.
And when I struggle, I find when I anchor into emotional intelligence, I'm able to work my way through that much sooner. So emotional intelligence really has 5 key components, which is being self-aware, motivated, self-regulating your emotions, your social skills when it comes to influencing other people's emotions, and your empathy level. And what I found really grew as a result of living abroad was that empathy piece.
Sure.
And I really want women to anchor into empathy, not just for others, because that is a good part of what gets you promoted, but also for ourselves, that self-empathy piece.
That is such a huge piece, because so often, I think, especially for women, because of the society we live in, because of all of the expectations that are put on us, we are so hard on every choice we make, on every decision that comes our way, on judging ourselves in a way that we wouldn't necessarily judge other women even. So that's such a huge part of sort of shifting that narrative.
It really is. I often remind people, it's like the bikini at the beach. You yourself have probably never thought a bad thought about another woman in a bikini. I know I haven't. If anything, I thought, she looks great. I should have tried on a bikini like that.
Right.
But what do we say to ourselves when we're in the fitting room?
Couldn't do it.
We say all the wrong stuff. And we forget that kindness we had towards others, being brave. And that's what we're doing. We're being brave, and we need to be kind to ourselves.
That's amazing. And I love that that's one of the things that you focus on, because I think personally, we need someone to show us how to do that. we don't have that really, unless you're, blessed to grow up in a family where your mom teaches you, your aunts, your uncles, whoever happens to be around you. But so often we don't have someone saying to us, unless we're teenagers and it's the girlfriend who thinks we need to go above and beyond, we don't have someone saying to us, like, be brave, just do it, see how it makes you feel. And it's so important to have someone sort of guide you in that direction. So I love that that's part of what you do. For people who maybe have never really worked with a life and leadership coach before, can you describe to them sort of what you do in order to sort of assist them along that path?
Right. We tap into a variety of things. So in my program, when I work with a woman, typically it's for about 3 months, depending, on the individual.
Sure.
But the program's designed to first increase your self-awareness and your motivation. So it's connecting to your why.
Love that.
What is the motivation? And is this motivation really serving me? So too often, as Brené Brown puts it, women are taught to please, perform, and perfect. I highly recommend her books. If you haven't read one, by all means, ladies, get out there. But that's what we get taught to do. So sometimes when we're overwhelmed with all the things we have on our plate, it's because we haven't tapped into that self-awareness and that motivation of, is this really for me? And is it connected to our why? So we do a lot of that. The self-regulation is a big part of emotional intelligence. So that's looking at things like our self-care. Am I taking care of myself well enough to be patient, to be empathetic,
right,
to show up when I need to show up? And as women, and I hear it so often, I heard it from a friend the other day, my other half is great at going golfing every Sunday, and yet I can't seem to get 5 minutes to myself.
Right.
Right. And then looking at how we use our social skills and empathy to impact and show up for others. So it's about winning through helping others win. And this can be a game changer in the workplace, because too often we don't want to take the time to stay with somebody in that place of empathy and let them be heard. We've gone a bit too far with the positive vibes only rhetoric. Right. We're not letting people express that they're frustrated or they're feeling down or whatever it is, and figuring out how do I sit with them in that empathy and move them forward versus judging them.
Right. And that's such a huge thing, because I think a lot of times when people think they're showing empathy, they're really actually sort of more so leaning towards sympathy in the moment of what they're going through, rather than empathizing with exactly where they are. Because as you said, what happens is people tend to, it could have been worse, or at least it's not this. And while I understand where that sentiment comes from, it does not honor what that person is going through in that moment. And regardless of circumstance, we all have valid feelings, even if your feeling in the current moment is, COVID sucks and I'm not happy and the last year has sucked. Sure, that's not an outlook everyone wants to have over the last year. But for some people, they need to get through that step to get to the next step. And if we don't honor where they are, we're just, in my opinion, disrespecting that.
Yeah, we make them swallow those emotions like a bad penny. And eventually it's all going to come right back up. Right. And it comes back up in ways that are negatively impactful, that the person is then feeling regretful for and ashamed of. And it becomes this, cycle of events that we could have prevented with that use of empathy. And this starts with ourselves, getting women to really be okay with not being okay. And say, you know what, I can get up in the morning and know I'm not where I want to be, but the yet comes into that. And the actionable steps forward that you celebrate comes into that. It's okay if life isn't perfect or it isn't how you want it right now. It's about what can we do to take it forward.
Right. And I think that's so important because, especially in the last year, being a fellow
Mhm.
Canadian, you can kind of understand. Now, I know you're in Nova Scotia and I'm in Ontario, so things have been different in the two places, but there has been a lot of, I can't control anything but myself in this moment because we, especially here in Ontario, have dealt with pretty severe lockdowns, consistently closed
Mhm.
businesses, the inability to really travel outside of our province. So there's been a whole lot of this like, I need to learn to just control me and be okay with that. And I think, especially for women, that's a struggle, right? Because we do
Mhm.
have this feeling like we need to be in control of everything. We need to know what's coming. We need to see the path ahead.
Yeah. I think we we tend to focus too much on that control and just keep ourselves busy,
Sure.
and we forget to allow ourselves to feel our emotions, understand why we're feeling them, and what is it we're striving for. Those is it happiness and then success? I think so. I put happiness before
I love
success
that.
because I don't think I'm going to enjoy the success if I'm not happy.
Sure.
And anchoring into emotional intelligence teaches you how to do this without diminishing or dismissing yourself. I really feel terrible every time I hear a woman say, I have all of this, I shouldn't feel this way. And it's not that you're not grateful enough. It really isn't. I'm confident you're a grateful person. It's just that things aren't exactly the way you want them, and you can work towards something different. You
Right.
can, love your coworkers and be grateful for your salary and all of these other things, and still think, oh, my 9 to 5 sucks. That's
Right.
okay. Let's just work on it.
Yeah, that's such a good thing. And like such a good thing to point out because I think, especially over the last year, there has been an awful lot of, at least in my circles, there has been an awful lot of, I'm grateful just to have a job. And I'm just telling myself I'm grateful to have a job because so many people have lost their jobs or businesses have closed.
Mhm.
And I struggle with that personally because, as you said, there is this sure, things are not perfect. Sure, I'm blessed because I'm in a different position, but your hurt, your pain, whatever you're going through isn't any less than someone else's just because it looks different, regardless of whether that's a job or something else. Like pain is pain, struggle is struggle. Sure,
Right.
there are different kinds, there are different levels, but just because, someone has gone through a death and you have gone through a death differently doesn't mean you both haven't experienced a loss in some way. And
Yeah.
this comparing my pain to your
Mm.
pain and yours is just worse than mine, so I have to be, happy with where I am. I'm not even sure how we got to that place in society, but it's
Yeah.
frustrating a little bit.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, whatever it is that's leading to your unhappiness, it isn't going to improve based on someone else being more unhappy.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
right.
There's a flaw in that thinking. There's a flaw in the thinking that if I remember that there are so many starving children in Africa, for example, and I can attest that
Right.
there are, if I focus on that, suddenly I will be satisfied with my circumstances. And it doesn't work that way. It's not a light switch. We need to do the work and also be honest about what's standing in the way of our happiness, and knowing that whatever it is, and regardless of who thinks it's valid or not valid, it's ours, and we can take it forward.
That's
That's,
so huge. And I love that because the example that you gave is pretty much my childhood. And I'm sure the case for most people. Like, I don't want to eat dinner. I'm not hungry, whatever. Well, there are starving kids in Africa. You're going to finish your plate kind of thing, right? Like that's sort of the mentality of the family that I grew up in. And I
yeah,
did for so many years. I was like, well, you know what? It's only craft dinner tonight, but I'm happy to have craft dinner because, kids in Africa don't have craft dinner. And that shift out of that mindset, it's a struggle, especially when it's been your whole life.
it is a struggle. But the thing is, it keeps you in the unhappiness. It keeps you away from your success because you're constantly telling yourself that you're not enough. You're not good enough because of your thinking.
Right.
And it's, in my opinion, it's simply not true. Regardless of what it is you're struggling with from a happiness perspective, it matters. If it's standing in the way of your happiness and your success, it matters. And you spending time honoring it, working your way through it, healing it, because that's the only way to get through it, that's what takes you forward. And too often we want these magic bullet, quick fixes, and we forget we're going to have to do the work.
Yes.
We're going to have to go on the journey.
And that I think is the sort of the pin in it, really, because so often, especially in the society we live in nowadays, we are offered these sort of quick fixes to all of our problems, right? If you're not happy, get a bigger house. If you're not happy, go buy this car. If you're not happy, go on a diet. Like all of these like sort of quick fix, let's get it done. But when push comes to shove, you really do have to sit and take the time and do the work, because no one can do that kind of work for you. It has to be done yourself. And that's scary for a lot of people.
Yeah, it really is scary because, you know, when we need to face what's not making us happy, we immediately, I'm going to go on this again, we immediately go back to, I'm not grateful enough.
Right.
Instead of going, you know what? This is just about elevating my game. This is about taking me from, level 3 to level 8.
Love
and
it.
becoming the best person I can become. And because the reality of it is, whether or not I'm happy, unhappy, full, hungry, I'm not changing anybody else's life, in some sort of magical way by staying small and staying unhappy. It doesn't help. I've never understood if it makes you feel better, I'm hungry too. It doesn't
Right.
make you feel better. So taking the courage, really, because that's what it is, taking the courage to say, you know what, even though I have it pretty great, I know it could be better and I want to work on that. Awesome. Do that. Get promoted into the C-suite. Love who you are and answer, how are you with, I'm great because I spent the day at the beach yesterday.
Oh,
let's start promoting that stuff as opposed to, being overwhelmed and exhausted and wearing it like a badge of honor.
It's
not working for us.
And that's the thing. It's not working for us. We do wear it like a badge of honor, but it's literally like tying us underwater. And I don't know, obviously, only being 40, I don't know when the shift happened, when it was like women started in the workplace and then this all happened, or if it's been going on for hundreds of years. But I feel like we need to unshackle ourselves from that badge, because it literally, it's not the badge of honor that people have told us it is.
No. And you really, I often think about, what is it, the life that you're creating? And when you're talking about creating that life, well, when are you living it? Because, when you hear a woman say something like, oh, I'd love to have time to read a book, maybe next year. Really?
Wow.
Is that what we're working on? And it depends on what's right for you. But if you want to be cultivating a life that makes you happy and successful right now, then coming to terms with you're not 100% where you want to be is the first step. Saying out loud, yeah, I'm not satisfied. I'm not completely happy. I am frustrated. I am overwhelmed, and I want to do the work. That's the first step.
And it's huge, I think, because the acknowledgement of, I can be both grateful for where I am, but also want more. Huge.
Yes. It's like we're accepting less because we feel like we're not supposed to ask for more. One of the reasons I'm on a mission to double the number of women in senior management positions is because women make up 50.2% of the educated workforce, and 25% of leadership positions.
Wow.
And I don't know about other ladies out there, but as far as I'm concerned, I've had enough.
Yeah.
It's time to take a seat at the table. And it's time to say, I will stop saying, well, I'm grateful that, I'm a junior manager, and start saying, no, I want to be a senior manager. I want to be an executive. This is what I want. And I want it in the next 3 to 5 years, and be okay with it. Be okay with just diving in there and taking what we want.
And owning the fact that not only are we allowed to have it, but we deserve it, I think, is a big part of that as well, because there is so much of this, well, I'm not sure, or we're just taught like maybe we don't really have the education because we are being paid less, or we don't have exactly the experience of someone else or whatever. And so owning that, yes, I'm worth it. Yes, I deserve it. Yes, I worked hard to get here. Huge.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that you say that. Yes, that I'm worth it. I love that, because this is the thing. We have so much to give. And if you think about it, by limiting ourselves, whether it's through, not focusing on our emotional and mental health, or not focusing on our career strategies and playing small, we're taking away from all we could potentially provide to those around us.
Wow.
It's the people you're going to inspire. It's the people who day you're going to brighten with your happiness. It's the younger women that you're going to mentor because of your success. You're going to impact so many people by giving yourself permission to stop playing small.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because you never really know, regardless of what you choose to do with your life, you never really know who you're impacting simply by being you in this world, because someone sees you doing what you love, or someone sees you, pushing a boundary, or just making a different choice than they've ever seen anywhere else. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
I love it. And women were craving it. I mean, this is why we get inspired by other badass women, right? It's because we're like, yeah, we want to do that.
Right.
It's about telling ourselves we're worth it. We're worth that next step. We're worth this investment in self. We need to spend our time, energy, and resources on how we become our best selves, and not just the if I lose 5 pounds, I'll feel better. Chances are, I don't think I've ever heard that working.
No.
There was other stuff that had to go along with it.
Right. Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, we live in this world that says, oh, well, you're not happy with how you look. Okay, well, lose 5 pounds. You'll be happy with how you look. But it's never really just about how you look in a bikini, for example. It's also about how you feel in your own skin, how you present to the world, what you think other people are thinking of you, and all these other things that if you don't take the time to stop and think about and process and actually, realize half of what I'm thinking isn't really what I want to be thinking to begin with. How do I change that? Then you're stuck in that loop of constant judgment, self-judgment for the most part.
Yeah. And that's where the self-empathy really comes into play. The constant loop of the self-judgment, it really shocks me, because every woman I talk to is so incredibly generous with the kindness that they extend to others. Mm-hmm. So it is so surprising that it's hard for that kindness to come back to themselves.
Right.
And I noticed it for myself on the days that I let that negative self-talk turn into shame. It doesn't turn around. On the days where I envelope it in self-empathy and remind myself that I'm a work in progress, and remind myself that, I'm focused on happiness and success in that order.
Right.
It picks up. It comes together.
Oh, you just reminded me of a quote I heard, and I don't even remember where I heard it, but it was a few years ago, and someone had said to me, you can be both a work in progress and a masterpiece at the same time. And it was like mind blown, right?
Right.
Love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's so much more to us than what we're letting ourselves see.
Oh, oh, that's so huge. That's so huge. For anyone who's listening to this, be sure you rewind, you go back, you listen again, because wow, like again, I don't know how we got here, especially as women. I don't know how we got to this place, but imagine how much of the world we can change simply by changing how critical we are of ourselves, how we judge our own thoughts, feelings, how we show up in the world. And when we start asking for the things that we know we deserve and allow ourselves to know we deserve them, imagine the things that we could change in this world.
Right? Yeah, I love that you say that. And it's about doing for yourself what you would do for others. Look how the world has taken storm watching female athletes say, I'm not in the right mindset. I'm not
Right.
in the right emotional space. And, everyone is supporting them. And too often we forget that we can find that support too. We can find that someone, and I like to be that soft place to land where it says, I understand that. I get this. I understand why it's difficult. I understand why you're struggling with it. Let's move forward with actions. I really believe it is support, self-empathy, and measurable actions that you celebrate along the way. So I may not be running 5 miles today, but I went walking for 20 minutes.
Awesome.
I'm celebrating it. Why not?
Yes.
The bed's made, the shower was done, celebrate it.
I love that. I love that so much, especially because I think on some days we can be super harsh in the, well, I didn't actually get any exercise today, right? Like I didn't go out and do
Mm,
that 5K. I didn't run for 2 hours or whatever it happens to be. But if you actually stop and break it down, where did you attempt to get something? Because we don't live in this mindset of something is better than nothing. If I drink one glass of water, it's better than none. It may not be the 5 glasses that I was aiming for, but tomorrow is a new day and I can try again. I can do better. I can,
yeah.
so yes, celebrate even the little wins, 2 cups of coffee instead of 3, if that's what your goal is, whatever.
Yeah, you have to celebrate the little wins because it's the step-by-step approach that leads to long-term success. There are times in your journey it will take you more than a minute to work your way through.
Right.
And you have to let yourself have that time. And it can be really difficult. I'm a results now kind of person. I would love to do everything like the flip of a light switch.
Sure.
But I've come to accept that I need to go on the journey to reap the rewards. And if part of the journey is saying everything's not okay right now, there is power in that because I faced it. I have faced that moment of everything is not okay. What am I going to do?
Right.
Support, self empathy, celebrating actions. That's what you're going to do.
That's amazing. That's so huge. So since we're talking about that and the strategy that you help people with, if people are looking to get in touch with you or just find out more about what you do, how can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Leighann Joseph. They can find me on Facebook, Living Loud Coaching, and they can find me at my website, Living Loud Coaching.
Perfect. And for everyone listening, I will include in the show notes for the episode of this podcast all of the links so that you can follow and you can get in touch and you can start working. I do want to ask you though, because COVID, has been COVID and
Mm-hmm.
it has been an interesting 17 months or so here in this country
Yeah.
so far. How has COVID affected you and your business? And I know things have been different in Nova Scotia, but
Yeah.
you have had to deal with COVID like the rest of us. And it's one of those things that I think has come along in our lifetime that we felt like we should have known how to deal with, even though, it's been 100 years since the world has
Yeah.
been faced with something like this. So
Yeah.
you want to talk a little bit about sort of how this year has played out for you?
It's interesting because COVID has been a positive and a negative for me. The positive is that it woke me up to I want to start my own business. I want to be a full-time coach and truly be there for people and truly serve them. That's what it woke me up to, that, I have a goal and I need to get at it. What was hard for me was I became very fearful of not contracting it so much myself, but passing it on.
Right.
So that added social anxiety of deciding, are we going to go spend time with people? I'm still struggling with that right now. Every time I see my family, I think to myself, where have I been? Who have I interacted with enough? Did I wash my hands enough? And so that part has been a challenge that I continue to work on. Yeah, for myself. I find COVID, it's layered, and there was just so much for each individual person, and I don't think anybody hasn't been impacted.
Agreed. And I think, especially here in Canada, maybe not so much in the States when I talk to my friends and people that I know there, but especially here in Canada, there really is still this struggle of, am I prepared to start seeing people again? How am I comfortable? And I'm actually finding for myself, there's a lot of conversation happening. I'm double vaccinated, you're double vaccinated, but I'm still not comfortable, sitting in a restaurant. So let's go sit on a patio somewhere, see if we can distance a little. Yeah. There are these kinds of conversations that are happening, which I actually think is kind of magical myself, because we're willing now to have conversations with people about what their comfort level is, about how they are perceiving this situation without judgment, just to understand, like, okay, you don't want to go out yet. Totally understandable. Movie theaters are open. You're not comfortable going inside. Let's go to the drive-in instead. And there's this negotiation happening in relationships, which I think is amazing. But it has absolutely been that kind of a, where have I been? Do I want to risk going to see this person? I'm not comfortable doing that yet. There might still be a risk because I went to the mall the other day or whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, right? This is it.
It's been an interesting year, and I'm hopeful moving forward that the changes people have made, whether it's about their health, their mental health, for example, physical health, just relationships. I'm hopeful that moving forward, people don't revert back and they continue to move forward in that positive way. Like you were talking about the fact that, we're now talking about the mental health of Olympic athletes. That's not something even 4 years ago that I think we would have been having a conversation about, but we should have been, based on the stress that they go through, the things that they're dealing with. Like this should be a conversation regularly.
Yeah. And I think to what you were saying, that is, we're starting to have conversations about emotions, which is really exciting, and about how people are feeling. And we're starting to say, let's take some space for that. And let's figure out how we support you and move forward.
Yes.
In a way that works for you.
Yes. And I want us to be having these conversations at the Olympics, at sporting events, at, CEO meetings and retreats. Like, I feel like I'm hopeful. I shouldn't say I feel like, I'm hopeful that this is sort of that floodgate opening, and we start to acknowledge that people's health isn't just about how they look. It's not just about what they eat or if they exercise. It's about how they feel in a moment, how we can respect that, how we can help them through it. Do people need additional resources and supports? How do we get there? Like all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely it. I think we're going to have a lot more social conversations, and we're going to make a lot more progress as a result of COVID, because I think people had time to reflect. I find people are more engaged and aware of what's going on because perhaps they had more time to watch the evening news. And I think we're starting to have conversations about a variety of topics. I often say to people, if you are really struggling financially, lockdown is just a state of life, because you don't have money to go to the movies. You don't have money to go to the patio. You don't. So hopefully all these things that we've learned bring us into bigger conversations, like the amount of buying power our dollar has. Some really good social conversations about where we're headed.
Yes. Yes, I love this. This is fabulous. I think moving forward, we will continue to do so. I'm hopeful we will continue to do so. And I'm hopeful that people like you can help people who don't even know where to start. I think that's the biggest challenge for a lot of people. I know, 6 years ago before I started chasing happiness, my biggest struggle was like, I don't even know where to start. I know I'm not happy, but I don't know what's going to make me happy. I don't know
Mm,
where my first stepping stone is, right? And I was blessed enough to have a friend that said, check out this book, start here. And I did, and it sort of snowballed from there. But having people guide you through the process, because it's not like we come with an owner's manual, right? There's
yeah,
nothing we can read that says like, here are the next steps for this problem you faced. But if you can get someone from the outside who isn't super invested personally in the outcome of what you're looking for, they have a
right.
different approach, right? And they can say, well, from the outside, this is what I hear you telling me. And maybe that's not what your friends would have heard because of all of the history that the two of you have built or
Yeah.
whatever. So I love that this is what you're doing for people.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a ton of fun. I like getting people, thinking about what it is they truly want, thinking about how do they create their happiness, how they can be content regardless of what life's throwing at them. These are interesting questions. And one questions I'm answering for myself, as the work in progress.
Sure. Well, and I think some of those questions, in my experience over the last 6 years, as I've sort of changed my life, some of those questions I'm not sure I'm ever going to have solid answers to, right? Because it changes
Mhm.
as you grow and develop. Like if someone had said to me a year ago, what do you think, makes you happy? My answer would have been very different prior to COVID than it is now, right? And so you
Yeah.
have to be willing to adapt and change and sort of steer the ship in a different direction as you grow and change.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what too often we end up struggling with, because we think to ourselves, well, why is this making me unhappy now? Or has it really been plaguing at you for a long time, but you were
Right.
pushing it back under the basis of I should be more grateful, I should be more I should be more positive. Were you actually pushing back your true feelings, your true self, and now it's starting to bubble over because you swallowed too many bad pennies?
Mm. Yes. Yes. We push down a lot. I don't know. I
Mm,
don't know why. I don't know how we got there, but we push down a lot. And I think if we all had the ability, especially in childhood, to just learn to let it all out, whether that's journaling, whether that's, creating something, whether that's talking to people, whether it's a mix of all of those things, imagine how light we would feel as adults not having carried all of those bad pennies.
oh, I would love that.
Oh,
I know, I would love that. Yeah, because it's uh, it's a funny thing when we manage to lighten ourselves, when we do the work and we figure out what it is that's going to lighten our load. It it feels so freeing and it feels so empowering, and it you can begin to gain that momentum. Those little steps forward build momentum. And that's what you need to remember, is you're not going to be in the same place this year as you were next.
right. Oh, I love that. That's perfect. I think that's just the reminder. And I think sometimes we do need the reminder, like who you are today is not who you're going to be tomorrow. And if
Mhm.
it's just one small change, like in every moment, we are becoming the better version of ourselves, no matter what that looks like. Right. Oh,
Yeah. We don't have to wear everything about ourselves like a sweater. We just because we're unhappy or we're frustrated or we're struggling in our job, whatever it happens to be, that doesn't become all of us. We don't have to cozy up in it. We can set that to the side and understand that even though sometimes that's part of us and it's on, we can take breaks from it. And if we learn to do that effectively, we will find ourselves moving further and further and further away from that identity. And and before you know it, the sweater is neatly in the closet.
I love that. And I love the description of that because I think most people will be like me and they'll be picturing that sweater and like how heavy it is and all of the things that come along with it and the permission to take it off and understand that you're not always shackled to it. Oh, I love that. I love that. This has been an amazing conversation. I typically end the podcast by asking my guests 4 questions. Are you game to answer?
Ooh, I am. Yes.
Awesome. Woohoo. Okay. So the first question is if you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
Ooh, I think I would go back and really learn that self-regulation piece, learning what to do when my emotions start to disrupt my happiness and my outcomes, particularly. I think that is key to happiness and success is being able to work through your emotions. And it's something I'm still working on later in life is,
Sure.
How do I continuously make that contentment for myself inside, regardless of what's going on outside. So that's, yeah, way younger, way younger.
I love that, especially because one of my hopes, because most of my friends are having babies these days, one of my hopes is that we teach children that. And as they grow, they know, right? So that they don't get to be the 40-year-old woman who doesn't know how to do that. So I love that that was your answer. The next question is what's the best or worst piece of advice you've ever been given and why?
I tell people this one all the time. When I was about 22, I had an auntie take me for lunch and say, 1 out of 4 women in Canada live in poverty because of divorce. One of those women will not be you. And she spent the rest of the lunch talking to me about making money, having money, and being in control of my money.
Oh my gosh.
And Crystal, when the worst moment in life happened and I had to make that decision to walk out of my life, money was the one thing I didn't have to worry about.
Wow.
It didn't have to be the influence on do I stay or do I go. And that, I think, for women is a big one, is because that statistics worsened over the years. You know what I mean? And I'm not trying to be a pessimist and say, believe that it'll end in divorce. No,
Right.
no. But that piece of advice of telling me about having security was a game changer. And I've come to realize it is something that is important to me, knowing I have security to make decisions, to have options.
Yeah. Well, and just the financial understanding, right? To have someone sit down with you and say, like, listen, you need to know what money is. You need to understand how it works, how it affects your life. Like, I'm 40 years old and I don't think realistically anyone has ever had that conversation with me. I've learned it along the way, but like nobody sat down and said like, this is why it matters, right?
Yeah. I opened my first RRSP account that month, and started tucking money away.
That's huge.
So it was a great piece of advice.
Huge.
Yeah.
Well, I love you.
And it goes for men and women. Everybody should have their own bank account.
Yes. Well, and their own knowledge about finances and ability to control, even if you live in a household where everything is joint, like partial control of some of your own independence. That's what it is. It's independence.
Yeah. Yeah. That was the best one.
That's huge. I love that. I love that. I could probably talk about that all day, but I won't.
I probably could.
The next question is, what's one thing about yourself that you'd like to work on?
Oh, I think that's a great question, by the way. That's a big one. I think the one piece about myself that I would like to work on is my own worthiness. Reminding myself that I am enough and I am not the product of my business outcomes. I am not the product of my waistline. Right. That I am, as I am today, 100% enough, and I have a place that I belong. And I would say I still work on that because it is a journey. It really is. And as life throws at you tough situations, and I've had a couple over the past few years, you don't realize that you lose that a bit if you're not careful, and it takes work to get it back. So that's what I would keep working on. Yeah.
I love that. I love that because I think so many people can relate to that. So, thank you for sharing that. So the last question is, what does happiness mean to you?
I heard this from someone, and I can't remember where I heard it from, but happiness is knowing I don't want to be anywhere else.
Ooh.
And I love that. I think of it often. And as I carve out my life, my world, there are so many moments where I'm sitting by a lake, not really doing anything other than just sitting there. And I think, I don't want to be anywhere else. And as a matter of fact, people would pay big money to be sitting here right now.
Right.
And that's what happiness is for me. It's those moments when I realize I'm perfectly at ease with where I am.
Oh my God. I love that. Oh, that's, you know what? That's the perfect way to end the podcast, but I will give you the opportunity, even though I think that's where I should cut. I will give you the opportunity if there's anything else you'd like to share with the Chasing Happiness community to go ahead and share.
I would say if you are struggling right now to find that happiness and success, to be okay with it, to truly be okay with it, find the support, the self-empathy, and the actions that will move you forward, but give yourself permission to be there.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much, Leighann, for joining me today. And for everyone listening, as I said, I will put in the show notes all of the links for social media and websites and all the fun stuff so that you can get in touch and follow Leighann. And I am so grateful to you, Leighann, for coming on today and not just sharing your wisdom and your knowledge, but your experience about life, because I think so many people can relate to what you've talked about today that it's going to impact a whole lot of people. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. I loved this conversation as I enjoyed our other conversations. It's just, this is the great thing about how you do your podcast. It's a conversation. And it's in the spirit of people becoming happy.
Yes.
So that's a fantastic thing. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for listening to this and coming back week after week. I absolutely am grateful to all of you who listen, who tune in, who message, who get in touch with the people who I talk to, because it's you guys who make the podcast, and I wouldn't be here, and Leighann and I wouldn't be able to have this conversation without you. So thank you so much for tuning in this week. And I am sending love and light to each and every one of you. And I will chat with you all next week. Bye for now.